Hello, my grots and gits. Welcome back to Happy Grumping Wargaming. Today we're getting right back into how the heck do we get better at this freaking game. And we're going to talk about the most tricky part of Warhammer 40,000, and that is deployment. I get this question all the time. How the heck do I deploy better? Because I tend to find that I lose the game in deployment. Or, oh, I would have won had I done this one different thing in deployment better. Well, these are awesome questions because in all reality, deployment is, I would say, the most important and hardest part of the game to master. So I've been trying to rack my brain about how the heck do I teach people how to deploy, and I think I pretty much got it. Now, in all reality, this is a very challenging thing, and you're going to have to practice it. But with this information, I believe and I know in my heart that you are absolutely going to get a leg up in deployment against your enemy, and you're going to enjoy crumping your opponents. So if you enjoy this content, give me a like and a subscription, and I'll make sure that I keep bringing all of this awesome content to you every single freaking week. Okay, so let's hop rolling right on into it. So the trickiest part of the game, yes, we have spoken about this. This is very dependent upon several different factors. First off, the matchup. Are you playing against Tau? Are you playing against Orcs? You're going to deploy very differently based off of which army is, going to attack you. Is it a gun line? Is it that melee pressure? You have to consider these things. The second thing is the terrain. Are you playing on GW open terrain? Are you playing on UKTC bowling lanes terrain? Are you playing on WTC, hence the best terrain in the world? Also, just a little shameless plug here, if you're looking for the most competitive terrain available, check out Weyland-Yutani. They are amazing. They build all of the WTC terrain, and they have all of this terrain pre-made. It is the best quality competitive terrain out there, and they also make some pretty sick battle mats. They have graciously given me an affiliate link, and if you use the code CRUMPING5, you can get 5% off on all of their terrain, and that is pretty awesome. So, mission is really important. Are we playing kill more mission? Or purge the foe? Are we playing I have to burn objectives missions? Are we playing the ritual? This really changes your deployment quite a bit. Fixed versus tactical is super critical to think about. Am I taking cleanse and deploy teleport hammers, or am I taking tactical where I have to be flexible, able to get anywhere on the board? Because if you know that you're playing tactical, well, you probably need at least 2 units able to get wholly within 9 inches of your 2 safe board edges, so that you can get an investigate signals if a early investigate signals is drawn. If you're taking tactical, then you have to have someone in position to be able to score you an early area denial, for example. So these are things that you have to keep in mind. If you're taking fixed, you don't have to worry about being able to get area denial turn 1, right? So these are little pros and cons for deployments. Deployment is a little trickier when you're taking tactical. It's just the truth. And then lastly, it's reserves. How much do I reserve? What do I reserve? Well, these are all great questions. And lucky for you, my buddy Jensen Go actually made an awesome flow sheet. So I want you guys to take a look at this, and we're going to kind of walk through this here, because he did just an absolutely awesome job. You guys can follow him at Twitter at JensenGoLOL, because he's a professional League of Legends coach, and he just does a great job with that. But he loves Warhammer, he loves geeking out about it, and he just made this great flow sheet that I think is just amazing for us to walk through right here. So you're deploying. All right, let's start with what is the plan. Are you planning on dominating with a primary? Or are you planning on winning on secondaries? Well, if you're planning on winning on secondaries, you have to ask your question, how can I split the map? You want to always pre-measure the amount of objective control. And so he actually made this a little bit for Orc specifically, but this works for literally any army, right? So pre-measure the OC embarkment after the truck movement. So if your truck or rhino or your transports move, if you start your models in transports, that is, how far can the transport get? And with your disembark, how far can that get you? Can that get you onto an objective? Can that get you to score a cleanse, for example? You want to pre-measure your access to the firing lanes. So let's say you're playing Imperial Guard. How far do I actually have to move my tank in order to be able to clearly see down this firing lane and obliterate anyone who wants to walk through it? Very important. Pre-measure access to staging points. So if you're playing Custodes, World Eaters, Orcs, anyone like this who really is trying to, maybe we're not necessarily trying to get into turn 1, but we want to make sure we connect turn 2, but we want to do it safely. How far do I have to be able to go in order to get to a safe staging area? And we'll talk about what a safe staging area is in just a little bit, in just a moment. And that's what happens when we're talking about secondaries. Then your primary domination. What are the staging points and lanes? Basically the same question, right? Where are the firing lanes? Where are they going to be able to deploy? So you have to be able to, where are they going to be able to sit their tanks or their crisis suit blobs or their obliterators or whatever, so that they can see you and obliterate you. These are the things that you have to really look at. Make sure that you check this little flow sheet out here, guys. I don't really have a way to link it on YouTube. If you're in the members only Discord, I posted it there. And otherwise, just go follow Jensen Go at Jensen Go LOL at on I guess X, not Twitter. And I'm sure you can find it there because he just did an awesome job with this and he should be promoting it. Okay, so this is the flow chart. Get started with it, learn it. It's really, really useful for when you're doing your deployment. Let's talk about the types of deployment. There are a couple different types of deployment. The first one that I like to call is YOLO. This is when you're screwed and you know that you basically don't have a good chance of winning this game. So you're just going to deploy everything on the line, maximize all movement potential, try to get to your opponent really early. Typically, your YOLO deployments are only going to be melee armies. You're not going to see shooting armies do YOLO deployments very often. So this is going to be like you have your Imperial Guard tank line, and you're playing against World Eaters. World Eaters are like, well, shit, I'm screwed. So World Eaters are like, all right, I might as well just start on the line. I'm going to scout move forward. I'm going to smash you. Get turn one. I had this in one of my most recent GTs. I was playing against my dear buddy Shetel, and he was playing a Imperial Guard tank line, and I was playing Orcs. So I was like, all right, listen, if I go second here, chances are really high that this guy's just going to obliterate me. He's going to pop all of my trucks, and then in the next turn, he'll kill all my infantry, and I just lose. But if I go first, I'm going to be able to catapult myself across the battlefield so that when he kills my trucks, it doesn't matter because my infantry is already close enough that I'll be able to stuff him turn 2. So I chose a YOLO deployment. And I'm going to show you guys examples of what YOLO deployment looks like here in just a minute. And lo and behold, I went first. I moved all my trucks up. He killed all my trucks in his turn 1 indirect shooting. And then in my turn 2, I just wad and I advanced forward and I smashed his lines. So that's basically, he knew what was going to happen. I knew what was going to happen. It's just that's the way that particular matchup tends to go. And it's a little frustrating that it can be so dependent on who goes first, but that particular matchup just is. So sometimes World Eaters will do this YOLO deployment. Sometimes Orcs will do this type of deployment. Custodes might do this type of deployment occasionally. Maybe a little bit less now that Custodes aren't as infantry dominant as they used to be, but still. Then you have your defensive type of deployment, which is hide everything. I don't want to get shot to pieces turn 1. So you're facing Tau, you're facing Imperial Guard, you're facing Chaos Space Marines. And you're like, I don't want my entire army to be deleted turn 1. So I'm going to hide behind cover and you will see nothing. Hopefully you have indirect because your shooting phase is going to be wasted. The problem with defensive is that what happens when you go first? Well, it's going to be really annoying trying to get to any of the objectives that you need to. But if your opponent goes first, well, you're pretty safe and you're really glad that you deploy defensively. Then you have the aggressive. Aggressive is not YOLO. Aggressive is getting yourself in a position where you're able to move out with relative amounts of freedom. So your opponent will be able to shoot you turn 1 if they go first, but they're going to have to move in order to get themselves into that position. So they're going to have to expose themselves a little bit in order to punish you for your aggressive deployment. So sometimes, an aggressive deployment is typically how I always deploy. Well, I won't say always, but it's the majority of the way I deploy. That doesn't mean that that's the majority of the way most people should deploy, because I have a relatively aggressive playstyle. So typically when I'm doing this aggressive deployment, and I'll show you really good examples of this in just a moment, your opponent's going to, let's say your opponent goes first, well, they're going to get to shoot you, but they're only going to get to shoot the things that you're willing to sacrifice. So that in your turn 1, you're going to be able to really capitalize on the fact that they had to move out. So that is the aggressive deployment type, and I promise you I got a really good example for it. And then lastly, we have the not on the board deployment type. This is the army that is everything's inside transports and or reserves. This is something that I do with Orcs quite often. So I will have, 800 points of my army in trucks. So when I deploy, there's no good targets. It's like, okay, well, you have to waste a activation to kill a truck, which isn't easy to kill. I mean, it's not hard to kill if you have a dedicated unit, but it's certainly not. You're not going to kill it with bolter fire. So people are going to be shooting these trucks. They kill the truck, and then I just deploy my troops off of the destruction of the truck in such a way that you can't really target the trucks. So I've got a really good example for that. Custodes actually have the ability to do this not on the board deployment. Luckily, thanks to the points decrease in Venatari, because one of the things that Venatari do is they have that special rule that allows them to rapid ingress even if it's already been used for free. And it's not limited to only one unit. So conceivably with Custodes, you can start 3 units of 3 Venatari in Deep Strike, and then have a Alaris brick in Deep Strike as well. So you can spend 1 CP to rapid ingress that Alaris brick, and then rapid ingress each one of those individual 3 units of Venatari. So you can get 4 rapid ingresses in one single turn. That is a very unique ability that Custodians have now. While now Custodians are actually, they're not really great right now, that is one trick that they have that no one else can claim. GSC can do this because, I mean, they want to start half of their board in Deep Strike. Demons can do this because demons have that 3-inch Deep Strike, or that 6-inch if you're within the Shadow of Chaos aura. So certain armies can do this not on the board deployment, and that's very powerful. So let's give you an example. What is a defensive deployment? So I did this on TTS here. Let me see if I can actually make this a little bit larger, so maybe it makes it a little bit easier for us to see. Okay, so here we go. And I'm actually going to minimize my face here for just a moment. So basically, this is going to be Imperial Guard versus Orcs. So if we're looking at this, Imperial Guard, they're going to have a 3 mana cores in the background here. They've got Leman Russ, maybe tank commanders or whatever, a Rogodorn. They've got some Bulgrin ready to block the charges. And this is on I think this is sweeping engagement here. And then I have my Orcs. So my Orcs know, okay, listen, I want to not get shot this turn. I'm going to get shot by the mana cores, but I really don't want to get shot. So look where everything is positioned. I have the Orcs in trucks on the line over here. So it doesn't matter where these Leman Russes move out. They're not going to be able to see me. So they just won't be able to shoot me. But I'm also close enough to where I can very easily grab this objective. I could disembark from the blue truck and run to the middle, and I can grab that objective. Then I've got my Squig Hogs at the bottom there. It's going to be impossible to see them from any of these lines. I've got another truck at the bottom. So this is a defensive deployment. The guard will not be able to see me. They're only shooting with indirect, and since they're only shooting with indirect, it's unlikely they're going to do very much damage. Yeah, they'll kill one truck, but it's not really that big a deal. So basically what the guard has to do is they're going to, if they go first, they're going to more or less lose their first shooting phase. And they're still going to have to move out so that they can score primary. If they don't move out, then I'm very comfortable because I'm going to move out in my first turn, and they're not going to score any primary. So they're still going to have to expose themselves. Meanwhile, I'm not really losing very much unless he just spikes with his indirect, which, you know, screw it. Sometimes that happens. Okay, so let's look at the next type of deployment. This is what I would call an aggressive deployment. So this is going to be on search and destroy. So when we are looking at this map, what I want you to do is, you see we've got the tanks, the Chimera, we've got the Rogodorn, he's blocked by some Bulgrin here. We've got another tank or commander, or, you know, Demolisher, Leman Russ or whatever, and then the 3 mana cores. Well, in this type of style of deployment, look where all of my models are. You can see things. You'll never be able to see this red truck, but you're going to really have to expose yourself. So this Leman Russ on the top, so right above the red writing where it says example of aggressive deployment, the Leman Russ on the top, if he moves fully out, he'll be able to see both the Squig Hogs, and he'll be able to see the purple truck. Okay, so he's going to have to choose one of those targets, though, because if he shoots into the Squig Hogs, he's not killing that truck. So he's going to have to choose one. Now, the truck is deployed in such a way that if the truck dies, I'm still going to be able to deploy every single model inside of the truck. So I don't lose any of the troops, which means in my turn 1, those troops can just move right on up and tag one of his tanks or get into the Rogodorn over here, because the center is only 18 inches across, and it's not going to be that hard to do that. The blue truck, exact same situation. So if you look on the right side of the screen where you've got the Leman Russ and you have the Rogodorn that's covered by the Bulgrin, these tanks can move down and they will be able to shoot this blue truck or this Mazrog. If they shoot and kill the blue truck, well, I'll deploy all the troops that are going to be behind the terrain. If they shoot Mazrog, well, I'm happy, because that's one of the ways I use Mazrog, is I actually use him as a distraction, be like, hey, shoot me, because Mazrog actually has the potential to tank the entire army, because he is the biggest and the best. So what happens here is he has to come on out. He has to expose himself to be able to shoot me, but he has no good targets. Okay, what's he going to do? Kill my truck? Great. My troops get out, and then I don't care. And that gives me a really good position to launch into him. So this is what I would call an aggressive deployment. He can get angles on me, but those angles are very calculated. I'm comfortable with him getting these angles. I'm okay if he kills Mazrog right here. It's fine, because when he kills Mazrog, that means the rest of my army is basically unmolested, and I'm able to get into him next turn. So this is a aggressive deployment. Let's look at one more here. We're going to look at the YOLO deployment. And this is a deployment that can be a little bit frustrating for people to recognize when it's time to YOLO. So let's look at World Eaters versus Guard here. So this is a notoriously terrible matchup for the World Eaters. They do not want to play against the Imperial Guard. Because their indirect fire is going to be shooting them. They're going to be slowing them with Earthshaker batteries. It's just an awful, awful matchup. And World Eaters are really not in a good place for it. So World Eaters are going to do what we call the YOLO deployment. And what we're going to look at is, if you look at underneath the red deployment line here, we have Angron. Then to the right of him, we've got some Exalted 8-bound. Then we've got some Exalted 8-bound with Lord Invocatus. And we've got some more 8-bound. And we have 2 Rhinos full of Berserkers. And on the top line, we've got Lehman Russ up in the upper left corner. Then we've got a Rogue Dorn. Then we've got some Bulgrin covering 3 tanks. And then more Bulgrin. So the World Eaters are going to lose this match. The only way that they're not going to lose this match is if they just go full send. They risk it. Let me pray that I go first. And they just stuff Imperial Guard in their deployment zone. So what's going to happen is, okay, they go first. Nice. They scout move forward, and then they move forward. The entire army is going to go at least 17 inches. If they get advanced and charge, maybe they go 20 inches. And the entire World Eaters army is going to charge the entire Imperial Guard army turn 1, and very well could just win turn 1. If they go second, Imperial Guard is going to move out and probably shoot the entire army to shit, and he loses. So YOLO is a very, very risky type of deployment. Essentially right here for the World Eaters, since they chose to deploy this way, they've given themselves the best chance to win this matchup that they realistically could have. If they go first, they win, because they will be charging the entire Imperial Guard army with their entire army turn 1. If they go second, they lose. It's that simple. So this is what we call the YOLO deployment. But sometimes the YOLO deployment is the best way to do things. For example, here, because if it doesn't matter if the World Eaters player is very defensive and he can't be shot turn 1 except by the indirect, he's going to lose if he goes second. Because what the Imperial Guard player is going to do is they're going to move the Bulgrin up, they're going to block all these movement lanes, then they're just going to shoot the entire World Eaters army to shit. So it doesn't matter how safe the World Eaters player is in this situation. He really just needs to go first. So he said, screw it, I'm going all in, I'm going first. And that's what we call the YOLO deployment. And then lastly, just kind of like we already spoke about the all-in reserves. So I kind of already gave you a few examples of that with like those orc deployments that I showed you. So basically, if you look at this one right here, the entire army is in trucks. So these are kind of blends of my army is not on the battlefield and aggressive and defensive, but you can take it even further, right? So you can do demons where they're going to deep strike 1,000 points into 1,000 points onto the battlefield. There's a couple different ways to do that, but yeah, guys, so this was my deployment masterclass. There's a lot more to go into, right? So there's more about knowing your matchups. There's more about different types of terrain. If you're looking for terrain, check out Wayland Yutani, code Crumpin5 for a 5% discount. Love you. But then there's also mission deployments. And if you look at this, search and destroy versus sweeping engagement, it allows for different types of deployments. So your primary really matters. Sometimes we talk about this a lot more in depth on the Discord. And so if you guys are looking for some more improvements in your game, if you're looking to take your game to the next level, hop into the Happy Crumpin Discord. If you join as a member through my Ko-Fi link, which is down below, then you get access to the members only section where I actually do spend a lot more time on an individual basis with people. I also offer coaching services. So if you guys are looking for coaching in order to take your game to the next level, don't hesitate. Check out my Ko-Fi link down below, and that will be all for today. So hopefully you guys learned a bunch about deployment. I know I certainly did. Go ahead and give Jensen Go a follow on X. Make sure that you thank him for making this awesome flow sheet for us. And until next time, my happy crumpers, crump on, baby.